Hey everybody, welcome to another Motor Agent TST webcast. I appreciate you taking the time to join us on a Saturday. I hope you're having a great day, and I'm glad that you decided to spend this time with us. Of course, again, here I am with my friend, Mr. G. Truglia. G,
how are you, Pete?
Going? Good
to
see you,
and good to see all of you out there.
Let's just say right off the bat, I want to thank you so much because we know there are a lot of things you could be doing with your time. We both appreciate the fact that your time is valuable, and we hope that you'll find this time well spent. After we're done with today's presentation, maintaining control, the professional approach to steering, suspension system, service, and repair. Before we get started, we want to make sure we send out a shout out to our friends at Duralast for making this possible.
Duralast.
Encourage you to check them out. They've been a lot of new improvements and innovations at the Duralast line that you might want to learn about at duralastparts.com. Okay.
And they're bringing this to you free.
Exactly.
So thank you. That's a big thing.
Yeah. In fact, all of the sponsors that we've had the opportunity to work with so far this year and for the remainder of the year, they're making twice as many of these webinars possible than we've ever been able to do in the past. And these are huge aftermarket companies, guys and gals, that are interested in helping you be the best that you can be. So, give them some kudos.
Important.
That.
Give them some kudos
for that.
Thank you, Duralast.
So first, some housekeeping. The webinar is best viewed on a tablet or PC. We know probably about half of you guys and gals are watching on your phone. That's cool. But if you really want to get the full benefit, you probably need a little bit bigger screen. Be sure you have a stable, high-speed internet connection. Always works best. Have paper and pen or pencil handy to take notes. If you look at the top of the player page, and I'll point that out one more time in a moment, you should see a link where you can click the link and download the handout. That's going to be on the play page. There's also a link on the initial screen here where you came in. That is to view it. Okay, that is to view it on your account later on if you want to. Okay, we're going to record it. Of course, you can access it anytime you want, same place that you are now. And make sure that when you're all said and done today, go back to this page here. And there's a place there that you can download a certificate of completion. You can hang that up on your wall in the shop. But if you're an instructor, you can use that for your continuing education credits. You can click on the link I said above here for the handout. Use the chat window, please, to ask your questions or offer your comments. There is a delay in the stream, so don't be offended if we don't hit your question right away. And we may share some really good ones, live on the screen if we can make that happen for you. And I hate to say this, but I think we have to, unfortunately. Don't abuse the chat, okay? Anyone who's abusing the chat, we're going to block you because that's not what it's here for. We don't want to do anything that's going to interfere with anyone's ability to gain some benefit from tonight's presentation. So anything that interferes with that outcome, that is something that we're not going to mess around with, okay? Of course, if there's any questions that we don't get to, or we don't answer for you, or something comes up later on, please feel free to email either G or myself. Those are the email addresses.
Actually, GT, you don't have to put my full name, at TST Seminars.
Oh, I could have sworn that's what it said on the email thing. GT at 8.
It's GT at TSTseminars.org.
So we'll fix it.
So just cross out that whole other thing.
Let's get started.
You bet.
All right.
And look at this.
Yeah. Anybody seen one of those? I've seen more than one of those.
Oh, yeah. Same here.
Where this is the entire failure of the front suspension unit. Control arm, lower ball joint, gone bye-bye. And I want to get right off the bat, the whole purpose for tonight is to draw some things home to you guys. We do these kind of repairs routinely, weekly, maybe for some of you guys even daily, whether it's tire changing, suspension components, alignments, steering components. And we can become very complacent when we're doing that kind of work. Now here, the big things are ADAS and advanced driver assist and safety systems and, all that. And it's important, not trying to downplay that.
But it comes down to the basics.
This is your basic safety systems right here. And the reason we want to really bring this subject up in this webcast is to help you overcome that complacency. You've heard us say this a million times. We're professionals. Our customers deserve the full extent of our experience, of our training, of our expertise, and helping not only maintain their vehicles and help them make that vehicle last, but to protect the occupants in that vehicle, their family, just like you want to make sure your family's protected.
You bet. That's
right?
super important, Pete.
Absolutely.
And again, these simple things, checking a tire rod, checking a ball joint, control arms break in, wheel bearings that have issues, all these things. And of course, when the rubber meets the road, the tire, one of the most important things.
Absolutely.
Dry rot, right?
Yep. So we'll talk about some of the factors that affects that ability of keeping that vehicle under control. Of course, there are many things that we can't control. We don't control weight distribution. We don't control wheelbase. We don't call or vehicle length or road quality or anything like that. But there are some factors that we do have some say-so over. And these are the three areas that we're going to talk about tonight.
And these are important, Pete. Tires, like I just mentioned, super important. And all the suspension components. I mean, these actually keep the stability of the car. Doesn't matter that you can have stability control in the vehicle. How could it stay stable if you got a bad component? Absolutely. It's like this building. If the foundation wasn't good, you can put a new roof on all you want. It's still going to sag and have a problem. Same with steering components. If we want to go right and the component is loose, it may not go right?
Yeah.
It may be going left.
Or you have an issue like that first photo that we looked at, where one wheel's pointing in one direction and the other wheel's pointing in the other direction. That's not going to work out very well.
We've seen a lot of it. And here, I know you don't have all the potholes that we have up here, but it's like a landmine around here. In fact, when Pierre and I came back from the big event, thank God we had a truck. We hit a gazillion freaking holes. You couldn't avoid them.
Yeah.
So that beats up steering components that need to be checked, especially after a winter.
Yeah. And absolutely. And I want you to answer honestly, and we're preaching to the choir, I'm sure. You're here on a Saturday to hang out with us and maybe learn a few things. And I guarantee you'll leave here tonight with at least something new that you didn't know before. But we all know, maybe it's your coworkers, maybe it's other shops that you worked at, where these things are not taken as seriously as they should be. When I was at Tech full time, every vehicle that I got my hands on, regardless of what it was in for, got a quick visual safety check to make sure that all of these things were, at least in a quick visual inspection, were okay to let that customer go back on the road with.
No doubt. And that's an important thing.
Yeah.
Our customers depend on us. If we send something out and they're going to take a trip somewhere, it doesn't matter if it's around the block or it's in a different state, right? That vehicle should be thoroughly checked out. They're relying on us. They're paying us for that.
Absolutely.
So we should be able to give them a complete and full report on that vehicle.
Yeah. The thing I always used to ask myself is, when I want my mom, when I want my wife and kids, when I want them driving that vehicle or in that vehicle.
Do I want to be on the opposite side of the road, or maybe even behind this guy?
Right.
If he has bad components on that vehicle.
Right. And here's where it all starts, as G mentioned earlier, man, when the rubber meets the road. The tires are the only thing that are in contact with the road surface, and every input the driver makes, whether it's braking, acceleration, steering, all of it is transmitted through that tire, through the contact patch, which is only about the size of my hand. That's about as big as that is. So think about that, guys and gals. You're talking about a 2,500, 3,500 pound of steel and iron hurtling down the highway, relying on how well we keep that 4 little postcard size contact patches in connection with the road. Okay.
Yeah. Kind of scary.
Well, it kind of makes you think.
He comes from a state that doesn't have a state inspection. Here in New York, we do. And part of our state inspection is not only the emission part, the OBD2 part, but the safety part, which is super important. And, what people don't realize, Pete, look at all the issues you could have with a tire. And when people don't come in, if we got more than 4/32 of an inch of rubber difference, and we're driving one of Pierre's favorite cars, is BMW X and X series, right? What's going to happen?
Right.
You're going to have with X drive, you're going to have a problem where you're going to take out a transfer case or a transfer case motor. Okay. All the tires have to be in good shape with no less than 4/32 different. That's the other thing. We get people come in, oh, just give me one tire. What, are you going to walk around like this?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
You don't buy one shoe, you buy two shoes or sneakers or whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah,
So we don't want to overlook a tire problem.
absolutely. And as you pointed out, in Florida, we don't have an inspection law, so that we didn't have a lot that we could actually make a customer do to change this. I understand that. If you guys and gals are thinking that now in the back of your mind, well, Pete, I can tell them all day long, but I can't make them fix it. You're right. You're absolutely right. But here's another thing for you. You got to document everything you see on that vehicle. If you let a vehicle out of your shop that is in a blatantly unsafe condition, and that family has an accident, guess who they're coming to see? Not just the shop owner, my friends. You personally can be held liable. It's happened more than once to an unsuspecting technician. We've actually were talking about that earlier. I know Pierre has been in that situation. I've been in that situation more than once. I'm sure G, as a shop owner, has been in that situation where the vehicle is so blatantly unsafe to operate that we've actually told that customer, we are not going to allow you to drive this home. I will tow it to your home for you. I will get you an Uber to take you and your kids back to your home, whatever is necessary. But unless you're going to fix this to where it's safe for you to operate, I'm not going to let you out of the driveway like that. And it's because if you do, yes, you can be liable for it. Down where I'm at, it's Morgan. Of course, they're nationwide now. Probably Morgan and Morgan's probably known all over the place. But think about it, guys and gals. And this is happening to my son right now. If you're involved in an accident and the person gets a lawyer, they're going to go back over everything that vehicle's been through in the last 12 months.
Oh, yeah.
And if they see that there's been the vehicle inspection shows that it's got bad tires on it, bad brakes on it, that goes back to ADAS. Is anything that affected the ADAS systems, which is not subject for tonight, but still on the radar? They're going to go back and look for the documentation for all of that. And they're going to come looking to you.
You bet.
Now, here's the thing. This is a pet peeve of mine. I was in all shops I worked in. I was one of the few guys that checked the tire pressure on every single vehicle that brought into my bay. Every single one. And you ask yourself, well, why did you do that? I think, and you probably saw this, something like 2/3 of the vehicles that come into your shop have at least one tire grossly underinflated. It's 10, 15 pounds below.
Oh, yeah. And it makes a difference.
Yeah.
You know, when I picked up my RV, and after I told them, please double check the air in the tires, they were about 15, 20 pounds low.
Yeah.
And that makes a big difference. You wonder why it was all over the road when you're driving this thing. Something simple as tire pressure. We use, of course, nowadays, all the electronic ones. We have the Snap-on one, a Mac one, whatever. But we check everyone's tire pressure and make sure we put it to what they recommend on the door. Okay. So you always have that little sticker there that tells you, you know, maybe like this car, 38 cold. Now, when someone drives in, we put an extra pound. So it'll be 39. Why? Because the tire's expanded, right? Unless it's left all day with us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's important. And another problem that we have with this car we have up on the lift here, when people have hybrids, extended range, and EVs, they like putting more air in the tire. They like going overinflation, and look what happens with overinflation. Why do they do that? So they can get less roll resistance and get more miles per charge or gallon if it's a hybrid type setup.
Yeah,
that's not the thing to do if you want to stay on the road.
Right. Right.
Okay. I mean, I'm real critical when I take my vet out, and even though I have plenty of rubber on it, my tires are starting to get a little crappy where I'm going to change them. Okay. Because you're dealing with a machine that is 3,000 plus pounds that, God forbid, you know, is your life more important than a $400 plus tire, which I think they go for each? Hey, I can make $1,600, but if I'm dead, I can't make anything, right?
Yeah.
And tires are super, super important.
Yeah. And several things that tire pressure impacts. The tire support the weight of the vehicle. Oh, wait a minute. No, the air in the tire supports the weight of the vehicle. So that's affecting that. Number two, even slightly underinflated tires run a lot hotter than a tire that's properly inflated, which is going to accelerate the wear, could actually lead to tire failure. And you guys around long enough to remember the Firestone Ford debacle way back when?
That's why you have TPMS.
That's where TPMS came from. The other factors you can see right here in the illustration. Properly inflated tire, full contact patch in contact with the ground. Overinflated makes that contact patch smaller. But look what happens with underinflated. Now we're kind of running on the edges on that tire. And what does that contact patch mean? It is the only thing connecting your customer with the road. Any inputs they want to make, steering, braking, all of that's going to be affected if the tires are not properly inflated to begin with.
And you only really have that much on the road. I mean, look at a tire. It's not the whole 360. You got a small part of 360 that is actually touching that road. So if you have one of these conditions here, or tires that don't have the proper depth, you got a problem.
Yeah.
And be careful. What we've noticed here on all the new car tires, we've noticed the same brand tire that you can get, you know, from your favorite tire dealer like we sell. You check the tire depth, new ones have less, because when they sell you a car, they must be getting special ones made for them that don't have the same thread depth as one you're going to buy to replace on that car.
Huh.
Yeah, we've noticed that from quite a few cars. They have them probably burn out in about 30,000 if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So,
That's a great point. Didn't think of that.
Yeah.
But like you're saying, when I'm checking those tire pressures, at least in my experience, I'm sure that G and Pierre in the background will vouch for it as well. Another thing I'm looking for is the odd man out. You know, if I see that 3 of the 4 tires are pretty close to spec and that other one is 10, 15 pounds too low, that one has a problem. I need to give a good close look at that tire, especially that tire. And we're going to talk about that in more detail in a minute. Yeah. Now, you mentioned wear. Take a look at this, guys and gals. This is just showing the net effect of that contact patch in contact with the ground under different wear conditions. When it's brand new, 5 miles an hour, we've got a good 100% of that contact patch in contact with the ground. Bring the speed up. Well, you ever watch those drag racing tires when that top fueler hits the gas and that big fat tire turns into really one tall skinny one? You still have that same effect, not so drastically on your car or your customer's car, but you still have the same effect. And you can see how the growth of the tires now minimize that contact patch. At 45 miles an hour, it's only 74% of what it normally would be. Now you get up to highway speeds. Now look, that's why this is so important.
Super important.
So important. Now look at when it starts to wear. This is just 4 millimeters of wear from new. Look now at 75 miles an hour. Look how little
it's hitting the road.
It's hitting the road. Now let's be clear here, because we're going to talk about that some more in a moment. This, what you don't see here, that's pure rubber on the road. All right, that's pure rubber on the road. And that's just fine and dandy if you're a NASCAR driver or Indy driver, or it's dry roads. But this is what we have to worry about. And this is why. If you get into wet weather, bad weather conditions, that's what those tread grooves are for, to channel that away so it can get in contact with the road.
And the proper tire for the vehicle makes a difference. You know, sometimes people try to cheap out. There are a lot of cheap brand tires out there. I know we deal with them. We only try to sell the name brand stuff.
Yeah.
And there is a difference of how water can actually squeeze out. Years back when I worked for Goodyear,
right?
Okay, they'd give us a whole thing of how you could channel the water out, and then they would take a competitor's tire and say, look, they don't channel it out and have stuff like this.
Yeah.
It makes a difference.
We actually got to play with that. Several years back, I was invited to Continental test grounds, and they gave us BMWs, and they cut us loose on their wet pavement test track.
Very nice.
And said, go have fun. See if you can, break it loose. And it was a comparison between their tires and others. But it was very interesting to participate in that kind of experiment. And the other thing too, guys, directional tires, most of the time is for this, to make sure that water is going to be channeled out properly.
Correct.
I'd like to add a point, temperature. We live in a place that gets cold. It may not be freezing, but when it gets cold, your tires also have less traction.
And that's true. So on my C7, it actually has something that tells you what the temperature of the tire is. And they recommend do not drive that vehicle under 50 miles an hour. You know, if you want full, you can drive it. But until the tires heat up, you're going to have a problem. So when I went to Corvette racing school, they had all this stuff you do to heat your tires up.
Yeah.
And it does make a big difference. You could feel the difference how it grabs the road.
Watch any big NASCAR race, and when they have to slow down, when that caution flag is out, you'll see drivers zigzagging.
Zigzagging
keep
warms
those
them up.
tires warmed up. Okay. All right. So let's take a little practical exercise. We're going to move over to the vehicle for just a few moments, and let's talk about some of the things that we hope that you will start, if you're not already, doing when you get into the shop on every vehicle that comes into your shop. If you're a shop owner or you're an educator, share this information, share this webcast with the new techs that you bring on and say, look, we want you to make sure you do this for our customers, because again, this is safety. This is pure and simple, making sure that that customer is as safe as we can help make them. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And remember, use the most important tools that God gave you: your brain, your eyes, your ears, your nose, your hands. And I'm going to show you why in a second after we do this.
Right. So we'll just kind of over here get kind of a neat little test vehicle today.
Yeah.
Go ahead, G. Tell them about your new little vehicle here.
The Chevy Bolt.
Yeah.
259 miles on a charge. Not a commercial, but
Not
anyway.
a commercial. But so one of the things I first like to do when I have the vehicle in the shop and I'm going to inspect the tires is I just make a mark. I'll get a tire crane on, I'll make a mark, and then I'm just going to do a quick visual. See if I see any visual signs of damage and any sign of anything in the tire. Now, this is true whether it's underinflated at the time of checking it or not.
Yeah, we have found a lot of the tires with screws in them, nails in them, piece of glass. Sometimes even someone complained about a noise. There's rocks stuck in there, and you may want to pull those rocks out.
Yep.
And we have some special stuff we use. This stuff right here. We would always use soapy water, but this is from a tire company, Tech Tire. And this stuff here really makes it easier to find leaks because it'll bubble up a lot easier.
Cool.
So we use this stuff quite a bit.
Now, as we mentioned, if you see anything embedded, if you know anything about the tire construction, and we're going to show a little bit of that more in a moment, inside the tire, what makes this a tubeless tire is the fact that the tube is now part of the tire body. It's called the inner liner. It's a very soft rubber inner coating. So when a nail does puncture or something does puncture, it's designed to seal around that object to minimize or prevent that catastrophic loss of air. And we're going to talk about why it's so important to repair them properly because of that in a minute. So if you see something in the tire, if the tire is not low, but it's punctured, you may want to point that out to your customer and say, look, let's take care of this before it gets to be a problem. It will eventually cause that leak and cause an issue down the road. Of course, it was already low, and go ahead and do that, make that recommendation for the repair. Now, here's another thing I want to point out to you. You can't do this on the ground. You have to get the car up in the air. Great example I want to share with you. I'll never forget this lady's car. Lady brought it in. Kids were in the car when she came in the shop just for an oil change. Nope, nothing big deal. Quickie oil change. I got it on the rack. As soon as the load came off of that car, that right front tire went boom. I went in the shop, kind of looking in my direction. What the hell's going on? So was I.
That'll wake you up.
I came around to the right side of the car, guys, and the right side tire blew out. I could stick my hand, literally, I could stick my hand into the hole left in that tire. And you know why it blew out? Because that tire worn so badly on the inside edge, where it's hard to see, it was right down to the cord body.
Wow.
That lady was running on TNT and didn't even know it.
So you had too much negative camber wearing on the inside.
Yeah, she had some issues for sure. And that's part of the next step. Once I made sure that there's really nothing around here that's going to hurt me, well, then I'll start taking my hands and I'll start rubbing them across the tire.
Don't get too excited.
Not too excited. No, I'm not trying to get anything. But I'm looking for any signs of irregular wear.
Sure. Feathering.
Is there any feathering? Is there any cupping? Anything like that?
And watch your hand. You should always do this after, like Pete said, visual, because sometimes there's glass in the tire.
Right.
And if you see something, that's why I got this. Let's say we've seen something up here. Mark it before you pull it out. Okay?
Yeah.
Because you can lose it when it's a small leak.
Absolutely. And I always try to see just how much it was in there.
Exactly.
Sometimes it really hasn't been penetrated through the tread layer yet. Right. But if it's there, we want to know about it. Wouldn't you want your wife to know, or wouldn't you want your
Significant other.
technician to tell your significant other that there was something causing her tire to leak, rather than having her sitting on the side of an interstate highway at rush hour trying to deal with a flat? Yeah, we know it can still happen, but how many of the situations can we prevent as professional technicians by taking just a few minutes on the car to perform these simple inspections?
Very important.
And when you're looking at the tire itself, again, of course, looking at the sidewalls for any signs of cracking, weathering, a little bit's normal. But if you can see any of the cord body in there, that tire has to go.
Yeah.
One more thing, the DOT numbers. The last 4 digits of the DOT numbers are the month and year the tire was built. And depending on the tire manufacturer, they are actually recommending replacement at either 5 or 10 years, regardless of how much life is left on the tread due to aging.
Right.
The tire.
That's where my tires are on my vet now. So it's the DOT number. And, when you want to drive around, I don't want to be on the side of the road. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm switching my tires.
All right.
A couple of things. One, on this tire here, this is a special tire that is a sealant puncture tire. They don't give you an air pump. They don't give you sealant to put in the tire. This is a special Michelin tire made for this vehicle that supposedly is self-sealing. Now, I don't know if it's going to work, but that's one of the things they tell you. The other thing is, everyone wants to put the sealant stuff in the tire. You got to be careful. It can ruin the TPMS system, the valve that's on there, or the sensor, I should say. And it could be messy when you go to pop that tire off. Always ask a customer if they put any sealant in that tire.
Yeah, and may
Not a good
manufacturer
thing.
will tell you that if it's in the tire,
The sensor's gone.
then, well, not just the sensor, but if it had a hole in it, you're not going to fix it.
Right.
It's not going to be able to fix it. So,
Yeah.
Any other comments for them on the tire inspections there, boss? Anything?
Tire inspection, look at the size, make sure the right size of the tire is on. Always look at the door jamb. One of the things we always do before putting the vehicle up, we look here. I mean, we could find it on Mitchell, All Data, Pro Demand, Identifix. There is a label that you can't see behind the door here. And this tells me, like on this car, it is 38 PSI for the 4 tires, front and rear. And a lot of times there is a difference between front and rear.
Yep.
Question or comment?
Not a question, a comment.
Comment.
Make sure you've got, and a good one. Make sure you've got safety glasses on also. A lot of guys don't.
Good
have safety
comment.
Glasses.
Good
Let me talk
comment.
about that, Pierre. See over here near the tire machine? What do we have on this tire machine?
All right. See that? Yeah. Full face shield.
We have a full face shield. And I'm going to tell you why. Now, one time I missed the safety guy, and this is not any BS. Brand new BMW came in, had a tire problem. So we have this little wizard thing. We clean up every wheel and we put bead sealer on it. Well, I didn't use glasses. And here I yell at my guys, hey, you got to use glasses. Something came off, and it wasn't off the thing, something on the wheel. All of a sudden, blood's dripping down. Piece came off, got me right in the lip, and blood was leaking all over me. If that would have got my eye, I'd be blind. So
They
we
call
have
you,
a bunch of these.
Blackbeard.
Okay. We have a bunch of these around that either this or goggles are very, very important
Yep.
to do.
Very good. Tires, yes. Now measuring the tread, yes, you can look. Unless you can see the tread wear bars in there. But if you really want to do the job justice, you want to make sure that you check the tread wear 3 spots across and at least 3 sections of the tire. Why? Again, we're looking for that abnormal wear. Are we getting any signs of feathering on the inside or outside shoulders? Is the tire getting problems, like I said before, with wavy patterns, developing the pattern? Now,
Sure.
do you use this right? Extend it, place it in the tread groove, push down till it stops, and that's your measurement. Now, there's some nice tools on the market now
Yeah.
where you can actually do this electronically. You can measure the tread depth, you can check the tire pressure, you can check the TPMS condition, and then print out a really nice printout showing what the wear pattern is on that vehicle, what the recommendations are. Share that with your customer and keep a copy for your records.
Yeah, there's quite a few nice gizmos out that we don't have here, but it does make it easier.
Yeah.
Visual inspections or digital inspections. Now, we do that here either with a tablet or phone. Everything goes into the customer's record because a lot of people leave their car off. We don't see them. They just go, hey, gee, whatever you guys think it needs, just do it. But if we could send them a picture and say, hey, look, you got
Right.
a problem here on the tire, or we see that the bead right here, someone has hit a curb, we recommend to them that, hey, this wheel needs to be reconditioned. We have a company that reconditions wheels and does a nice job.
Yeah. And another point, I know many of you who are watching may be working for any of the chains out there, like whether it's Tires Plus or Firestone or Goodyear or
whatever,
Walmart or whatever. I hope none of you guys are working for Walmart, but that's thing to say. Anyway, you know what I'm saying? And you all have your checklists that the bosses are always busting your chops about filling out. Well, this is one, guys and gals, I want you to fill out. Take the time, note this, record it, because you're also covering your backside down the road. If you did a visual inspection and everything was up to snuff when you had the car last, that could come back to save you down the road. And if you did find a problem and you made that recommendation, or your service writer made that recommendation and gave that form to the vehicle to the customer, I hope they have a process where that's signed by the customer so they can show the receipt of that and that information is given.
Yeah.
Question,
see here,
it's actually a question, and interesting because I thought everybody kind of knew this, but measure at the wear bar or the total tread depth?
Very good question. Thank you for asking. The question is, do you measure at the wear bar or do you measure at or directly in the tread depth? The question answer is directly in the tread depth. Don't measure on the wear bar or your readings are going to be off by that amount. The whole idea for the wear bar is if you see that flush with the surface, that tire's shot. Okay?
Gone.
That's the same thing with the old Lincoln penny trick.
That's right.
Right. If you stick the penny in the tread, head down, Lincoln's head down, and you can see the top of his head, that tire's worn out, been worn out. Right. So that's another quick check. And you can share that with your customers.
Exactly.
So that's something they can do pretty easily.
Yeah. The wear bars, we had a guy in recently. His wear bars, his tire was about as bald as my head. But of course, he disagreed. That's pretty damn bald. Yeah. So he kind of disagreed, and we showed him, we have a new tire around. Go, look at the difference. Nah, I don't need tires.
Yeah.
Sometimes but you know what? Here in New York State, it's a law. We write it down on the RO, we get their signature. Sign that. I refuse to sign that. Then we put down, he refused to sign it. We mark it down and we get him out and say, please don't come back anymore.
Yeah, documentation. And as G pointed out earlier, very correctly so, when you're doing that vehicle inspection, if you see that the vehicle has like a brand new tire on one side and a worn out one on the other side, they need to be imbalanced on the axles. They really, really do. And for a variety of reasons, we won't spend a lot of time on now, but everything from TPMS, all the advanced systems that are monitoring the wheel speed in order to provide that vehicle control.
And just think about traction, right?
Yeah.
Think about the difference in traction. And if you we had a guy like that with a BMW. He didn't listen to us. Then, of course, he needed a transfer case. Mm-hmm. So after that, him and his whole family, when we told them they needed tires, they listened.
Yeah, it's got tires. All right.
Sometimes they need to get burned. So you want to do the shake and bake on that or what?
Not yet. Time to go. We got one more thing on the tires, though, and then we'll move on along the line. This is going to be the fun part. All right. So you did your check, and you found this. And we now have a puncture, and here we got a bunch of number puncture A, puncture B. Which one of these tires are repairable? If you think it's A, say A in the comments. B, if it's B. And if you think both are repairable, type in a C. And I want to give you a few minutes because so we have a little slight delay here. And we're going to go ahead and give you some time to put some answers in there while Pierre monitors the stream.
And I can find my water. Yeah. I forgot what
if you think A alone, put A. If you think B alone, put B. If you think both are repairable, put C. All right. And like I said, we'll give that a few minutes. Now, if you guys were with us last time, we did this interactive thing using an app in our presentation that you could answer on your phone, but we found out later on that half you guys are watching on your phone, you couldn't participate. So we're doing a little bit differently this time.
There's a lot of B's, there's one C.
All right, a lot of B's, one C.
So far.
Don't be afraid to answer.
Please. Nobody knows who you are. All right. So if we're slowing down in the comments there,
Well, yeah, but they're still doing it. But yeah,
All right.
mostly bees. Mostly bees.
So most of you answering B correct. B is the only one that you can repair. And a lot of us in old school, this used to be considered repairable,
Don't do
but
it.
not anymore. In fact, it hasn't been for quite some time now. If you're looking at any damage to the tire, any punctures in the tire, first and foremost is where is that located? This is the good zone that you can make the repair in. Anything outside of that zone, the tire is not repairable. And certainly, if it's in the sidewall of the tire, it's junk.
Oh,
Don't even
gone.
attempt it. And we were talking earlier, we have so many customers who went down to the local parts store and bought that little
Plug kit.
cloth plug crap and stuck it in there. Oh, it's not leaking. Yeah, but the way a radial tire moves under its operation, it's going to saw through that plug. And if that comes loose or if that gets kicks out, you're talking about a catastrophe. Now you don't have a little pinhole. Now you got a 1/4-inch hole. And that tire is going to go down in a heartbeat. And that's catastrophic failure. That is an accident. That's a crash waiting to happen.
But let's also say when you go through that with the plug inserter, you are putting a bigger hole in most cases in there.
Yeah.
Okay. And this thing comes plopping out. It's unsafe in our state. That is against the New York State inspection law. So that vehicle would fail for any plug in the tire, never mind a sidewall.
Right.
So sidewall, no matter how you try to repair it,
Right.
is non-repairable. Non-repairable.
All right. So the next step is I found some damage. How do I repair it properly? Well, I got a little video treat for you. Why don't you watch now? Share with us on
Yeah, give
how
us
to
your
do the
feedback.
job right. If the tire appears to be serviceable, inform your customer of your preliminary findings, but be sure to explain to them that underinflated tires can still suffer damage even if it was only driven for a short distance. And it's going to be necessary to dismount the tire and inspect it inside and out before a final repair decision can be made. With the tire dismounted from the wheel, inspect the interior for visual damage. Be sure to inspect for the presence of any prior repairs to the tire. If a prior repair is going to be in line or overlap with the repair that you need to make, well, the tire is disqualified, needs to be replaced. And also, if you see a repair that was made with a patch or plug only, rather than the combination of the two, well, that's an improper repair, and the tire also should be replaced rather than repaired. And finally, if you see one of those string plugs in the tire, well, that's absolutely an improper repair and also mandates that the tire be replaced. As far as the number of repairs allowed per tire, well, that varies quite a bit and can be dependent upon the tire size, load, and speed ratings. I've always gone by the 2-for rule myself, no more than 2 proper repairs allowed per tire. But of course, when setting the policies for your shop, be sure to check out the OEM and tire manufacturer's policies when making those decisions. Once you've determined that the tire can be repaired, it is imperative that you repair it properly. Failure to do so could result in an inconvenience to a customer suffering another flat, and of course, a resulting comeback. Worst case is that there's a catastrophic tire failure and an accident. In either case, you're going to be the one responsible. Consider that when a foreign object penetrates the tire, it's also penetrating and damaging the steel belts and/or the cord plies that make up the tire body. It's also penetrating the soft inner liner of the tire, resulting in the air loss that caught your attention in the first place. I hit the button. Sorry, guys. If the tire appears if the tire appears to be serviceable, inform your customer of your
This is what happens when
if the tire appears to be serviceable, inform
speed Pete up. He's going to be speaking.
your customer of your preliminary findings. But be sure to explain to them that underinflated tires can still suffer damage even if it was only driven for a short distance. And it's going to be necessary to dismount the tire and inspect it inside and out before a final repair decision can be made. With the tire dismounted from the wheel, inspect the interior for visual damage. Be sure to inspect for the presence of any prior repairs to the tire. If a prior repair is going to be in line or overlap with the repair that you need to make, well, the tire is disqualified, needs to be replaced. And also, if you see a repair that was made with a patch or plug only, rather than the combination of the two, well, that's an improper repair, and the tire also should be replaced rather than repaired. And finally, if you see one of those string plugs in the tire, well, that's absolutely an improper repair, and also mandates that the tire be replaced. As far as the number of repairs allowed per tire, well, that varies quite a bit and can be dependent upon the tire size, load, and speed ratings. I've always gone by the twofer rule myself, no more than 2 proper repairs allowed per tire. But of course, when setting the policies for your shop, be sure to check out the OEM and tire manufacturer's policies when making those decisions. Once you've determined that the tire can be repaired, it is imperative that you repair it properly. Failure to do so could result in an inconvenience to a customer suffering another flat, and of course, a resulting comeback. Worst case is that there's a catastrophic tire failure and an accident. In either case, you're going to be the one responsible. Consider that when a foreign object penetrates the tire, it's also penetrating and damaging the steel belts and or the cord plies that make up the tire body. It's also penetrating the soft inner liner of the tire, resulting in the air loss that caught your attention in the first place. To properly repair the tire, we have to repair all of the damage. And that requires the use of a plug, one, to fill the damaged channel, sealing it against future water or moisture intrusion and thereby protecting the belts from further damage, and an interior patch to repair the damage done to the inner liner. The most common tire repair unit is the combi patch, a one-piece repair that combines the plug and patch in one. There are also two-piece repair kits designed for use when the angle of penetration in the tire exceeds 25 degrees. Preparation is important. Once you've marked the location of the damage and removed the object, scrape away the silicone surface layer on the inner liner prior to buffing it with a low-speed buffing wheel. Take the time to slowly buff the area around the damage entry until you see a uniform velvety surface. Clean the treated surface with a brass bristle brush to remove any rubber particles. Never spray the buffed surface with the pre-buff cleaner or any other aerosol for that matter. It will prevent the patch from sticking securely. Third, apply adhesive to both the inner liner and the interior of the damage channel to ensure complete bonding between the repair unit and the tire. Allow the adhesive to dry thoroughly and never touch the exposed surfaces of the patch or plug during the installation. Fourth, be sure to pull enough tension on the combi patch to dimple the center of the interior patch. This will help ensure that the patch makes full contact with the tire. Further ensure that contact by using the stitching tool to stitch the patch, working from the inside out while applying moderate pressure. Last, follow up with a coating of inner liner repair around the circumference of the patch and covering any remaining area of the inner liner you buffed out. Vacuum out any remaining debris, and you're ready to remount the tire. All right. So sorry for the little jump there with the video though. A few things I'd like to point out during the course of the video. You see there were several steps involving different chemical applications, the cleaner, the glue, the inner liner sealant. Whatever product line that you have in your shop, use only the products in that line together to make that repair. Don't mix and match different product companies. You don't use this guy's glue and then that guy's cleaner and that guy's sealant. You use the set. From the the patch repairs, the combi patches, a whole 9 yards. Use it as a one product line in order to make that repair, because it's designed to work with each other to get that maximum adhesion to make sure that patch lasts, right?
And same thing when you rolled it, you had to wait a certain period of time that the video told you, and pulling off that little plastic piece on top of it. Some companies say don't do it, leave it, and others say to pull it. So we know we've used different brands, but for years now, it's got to be 15 years, we use Tech Stuff again, and they have a whole way of doing a repair, and you want to do that. We also clean the wheel. All wheels get cleaned, and we put bead sealer, because nowadays, especially if people don't drain their compressor speed, if you got water in there, when you're putting air in that tire, you're getting water in there, and this really wreaks havoc on, it looks like, on the beads.
Yeah.
So you put that rubber bead sealer stuff on there. Make sure you clean the rim down, because we got fussy people. Like if I seen black stuff on my wheel, I'd be freaked out.
Yeah.
Okay, on a black wheel, you won't notice it.
Absolutely. And another thing came up during the break while we were letting you guys watch the video that Pierre pointed out that we did not mention to you on the tire inspection. We really need to. So Pierre, if you could kind of swing us over a little bit real quick. When you're doing that visual inspection, look for any sign of bulging on inner or outer sidewalls, which could indicate impact with a curbing or something that caused the cord body behind that to split. Now you got basically a blister underneath there. That tire needs to go. With that being said, you may feel a slight dimple going this way with the tire. In fact, a lot of times it might be 1 or up to 3 little dimples here. Don't worry about those. Those are splice points for that particular manufacturer's tires, and for that brand, that would be normal.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth, because a lot of times you will see those dimples or feel them, and it could even happen on a brand new tire, depending on the manufacturer.
Yeah. Okay. Now, we said earlier that there were 3 factors that we have some say-so over. We've covered the tires, and again, I got it. I'm sorry if I stress this too much. Please, not just yourselves, encourage your fellow technicians, encourage your shop owners if you're not the shop owner. Encourage the new guys that start, the new gals that start. Teach them in your class. Every car that comes in, check your customers' tires. Your boss probably says it because they want to sell tires. I get that part. I'm telling you to do it because I want that customer to leave safely, or at least with the knowledge of what's going on with their vehicle. And of course, when you want that person who's looking at your wife's car, your mother's car, your father's car, your whatever, wouldn't you expect them to do the same for them rather than have them have a problem down the road?
No doubt.
Yeah.
Safety, tires are good.
So the next thing we have to do on a vehicle, still focus on keeping that contact patch on the ground, because if it's not on the ground, no matter what we try to do with a steering wheel input or brake pedal or gas, it ain't going to happen.
Bouncing jounce.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that we keep that tire on the ground when it runs into some type of road irregularity, whether it's minor or it's huge and major, and that comes in the suspension system.
Suspension.
The suspension system includes the tires. Well, wait a minute. The tires, we just got through talking about that, didn't we?
That we did.
We talked about the tires, and more importantly, the air pressure in the tires. The tire's a big spring. It's a big air spring. It's the first part of the suspension system. The springs, the shock absorbers, and the linkages that make all of these connected together. That's all the suspension system. Now, the suspension systems, this is kind of interesting, I thought, when I first found this out, must support both road handling and handling. In other words, we've got to keep that tire on the ground in order to maintain control over it 100% of the time. However, we also want ride quality. Your customer wants that nice, soft, cushy ride. Doesn't want to feel the dividers in the highway.
It doesn't
or
want to
the
be like
pothole
Grandpa's
or nothing
Buick
like
or anything,
that,
does
right?
it?
But the thing is, those two are opposed for each other. It's hard to have one and not give up from the other, right?
Question or comment, Pierre?
I like to make this comment.
Sure.
When I had my shop, people always asked for performance upgrades, and I would say it's a suspension system. You don't change one component to a high performance component without balancing it against the others. Spring, shock, sway bars.
And that's important.
Yeah, very good point. So if you didn't hear
Good
that
point.
from Pierre in the background, your customers may want to come in, and this applies like Meier down south. It's like we want to jack this thing up in the air, right? And so that's drastically going to affect how the suspension and steering geometry works. So he pointed out, you can't do one thing to one piece and not consider its impact on all the rest.
Correct.
Right. So you want to do it as a package.
Like
deal.
putting air shocks in a vehicle, lifting the back up, or doing different springs. What did you just do to the geometry of the alignment up front?
Absolutely.
Right? It's all affected. And what did you do to how that car is going to stay planted on the ground?
Yeah.
Not going to be the same thing.
Yeah. Now, some of you may have seen us before doing our webcast. Some of you may be new. I do want to put this out there in case you haven't heard G and I preach this. ADAS. Are you currently in your shop performing some type of recalibration or relearn on the ADAS systems on your customers' vehicles? Based on what we've seen doing this around the country, the answer is, for most of you, no. We're either sending it out or we're not worrying with it, whatever the case might be. You're not directly involved in diagnosing or servicing ADAS-related components. That's the cameras, that's the radar, all the various sensors. But let me tell you this. If you're doing tires, if you're doing suspension, if you're doing steering, if you're doing alignments, you, my friend, are in the ADAS business. Anything you do to that vehicle that changes the way it sees the world around it from the day it left the showroom, you have changed how those systems function. And you are going to be the one responsible for it if something happens. So far, that hadn't gotten on the wind and the radar of Morgan & Morgan, but it's only a matter of time.
Oh, yeah.
And even if you do get involved with this is a whole nother spectrum that you need to learn about if you don't already. Too many cases that we've seen people perform these calibrations, and they're getting them calibrate. They're getting the computer to accept the calibration, but it's still wrong. It's still wrong. It only has to be a 1 degree off, either up, down, left, right, for these systems to work improperly and not protect your customer, or start slamming on the brakes when they're not even near having a problem.
Exactly. Like this vehicle here has surround view, so it can see 360 around the vehicle. You change a mirror, you change a piece of glass, you change a headlight, anything. You take that grill out to maybe change the condenser this time of year, right?
Yeah.
You got a problem.
Yeah.
You better know what you're doing, because like you said, Morgan & Morgan will be at your doorstep.
Yeah, and don't be mistaken that all I did was take it off and bolt it right back on again. It's still not in the same exact place it was, my friends.
Yeah, don't worry about scribing and all that junk. It's not the same.
So again, not an ADAS class, but I want to make sure that's on your radar if you haven't heard us preach that before. Goal of suspension is to keep the road wheel in contact with the road surface as much as possible, because all the road or ground forces acting on the vehicle do so through that postcard size contact patch at the 4 corners of the vehicle. All the driver inputs are also relayed through those tiny little patches. And what makes up the suspension? 1 or 2 things, my friend, right? Springs or the dampers or the shock absorbers, right?
So this piece right here, we see a lot of them come in. You know, people do struts, and this happens to be a loaded strut. Okay, but if you don't change the bearing plates up top right here, you got a problem. And a lot of noise that you hear, maybe people saying groaning and stuff. You see how this one here has this rubber? It has like a boot setup, because when you hit a, well, what happens after a while, these break down, and when they break down, you got metal on metal. And of course, when they're turning the wheel, there's a problem. So always, if you're replacing struts that are not a loaded strut, as they call it, make sure you get bearing tops and and mounting stuff. And if it has a rubber boot on the bottom, you better replace it, or rubber gasket. Sometimes they have them on top and bottom, because that will make a big difference in what your customer is going to hear or feel.
Now, springs, the job of the springs is to deflect as the car goes over a bump. And of course, there goes our strut.
Don't worry about that. It bounced quite well.
Ignore the man behind the curtain, right?
That's it.
As it goes over a bump, that spring is going to take that energy in. But guess what? It's immediately going to release it again. So if we don't have a way to dissipate that energy, it's just going to keep bouncing down the road like a pogo stick, right? And springs, my friend, they wear.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody remember the old Ford I-beam pickup suspensions? I remember when I first started in this business, when guys were doing alignments on this vehicle.
We used to bend them.
Yeah, it used to bend the things.
The little porta pack.
And you have to think to yourself, what in the world bent that big-ass I-beam in the first place? It wasn't the I-beams that were bending. The springs were wearing out, and the road height would drop. And the way those things work, they're like big scissors, right? They would change, and that's what changed the angle of the tires. Put new springs on that truck, and it was fine.
Oh, yeah.
So springs
Now,
wear
see,
out.
yeah, and torsion bars, that's a spring.
Yep.
How many people forgot? You know, one of the big things when I did alignments and do alignments is really use your stick for ride height. Make sure you measure that ride height and make sure it is accurate. Okay?
Yep. And that, if you're doing alignments, that's one of the very first things you should be doing is checking the ride height of the vehicle. to make
After
sure
the air
it's in
pressure.
spec. After you've checked your air pressure, because that will also affect the ride height. Remember we talked about that leaking in the right direction kind of a thing? These are all factors that affect that as well. And as you mentioned, we're going to go over just very quickly. Most commonly, I think you run to the leaf springs, coil springs. Just want to stress that they do wear. They do wear. Now, the dampener side of things, that's in the shock absorbers. Whether it's incorporated in the strut, as she was just sharing with you, or it's just a plain old shock absorber that you got bolted onto the vehicle, its job is to dissipate that energy. And the way it does it is it forces piston through an oil-filled tube. And these have very small holes, very small orifice through them. So it takes a lot of energy to force that piston through that. And that's what helps dissipate the energy. Bigger the holes, easier it is to move. Smaller it is, the more difficult it is.
And the gas filled on most of the new ones, there's some oil in there, but the gas filled ones don't tend to leak as much. So people, you know, one thing when it comes to suspension that your customer is not going to be aware of, they remember their old cars. Oh, well, it's not leaking oil out of it. It's good. No, that's not true. The seals can go and the gas in there could leak out, and they get used to the ride. They get used to doing this. When you put new ones in, they go, wow, my car handles so much better.
Yeah.
Sure it does. There's a big difference. Now we have electronic shocks. You know, I remember some of the first BMWs when they came out with them that it did. They were $1,800 a shock or a strut. Okay. So you also have air suspension where bags can leak and stuff, give you a problem. Mercedes was a big one. We used to do quite a bit of those. And you got to find these leaks.
Yeah.
Which brings me to another leak problem. Tire repair. Just going back a second. Leaking. Sometimes you put them in the tank or use that special foam stuff. You can't see it. Just a tidbit what we do here. We remove all the air out of the tire. We will then put the proper amount of CO2 in the tire and use the bullseye system and find it. We found a porous wheel where Mercedes-Benz couldn't find it. 2 tire dealers couldn't find it. But when we put it in, and it's real crazy when you go, it's beeping off the wheel. It's like,
Yeah.
it was a porous wheel, just like anything that could be porous, no problem. Brand new car.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Symptoms of bad suspension system. Now, G just told you, your customers aren't really going to notice that they're having issues because it happens gradually over time. Only a trained driver is going to notice any major changes in how their suspension is working.
No doubt.
And of course, you can hear the guys in the pit radios talking about it all the time during the races. But your average driver is not going to notice the difference. Where you are going to see it is when you take it out for a test drive and you notice right away that you've got a less than comfortable ride, right? Maybe you'll notice that when you take it out and you hit the brakes, you get an excessive nosedive in the front end. Or when you hit the acceleration, you get an excessive squat in the rear end. as the shocks and suspension are not able to take care of that. Steering problems. Shock absorbers help stabilize the vehicle by maintaining the balance and center of gravity. When they feel, you may feel the car sway, dip, or lift as you make turns at different speeds and to different degrees. So take it out for that test drive. See how the car feels. Does it feel right to you? Hit that speed bump, hit that pothole, see how it reacts and how quickly it returns to normal.
And let's not forget about steering damper type shocks that are on many systems where it may feel a lot looser when they go. We see quite a few of those on a little bit more of a heavier vehicle.
Part of your tire inspection, any unusual tread wear. Are you going to see that wavy wear to the tire? And what's happening here is that that shock is not able to overcome that spring bouncing up and down. It may not bounce off the ground like them lowriders like to do, but the contact patch is constantly being loaded, unloaded, loaded, unloaded, loaded, unloaded when it hits that deflection, and the shock can't get it under control, and it starts to create that wavy pattern.
And how about flat spots?
Yeah. You know, if you live on a dirt road like I do, you get that washboard road, and that's how it got to be washboarded. People with bad suspension driving on it.
And let me try to get something here. Go ahead.
Sure.
Continue.
Another thing to look for when you're inspecting the shocks and suspension system, fluid leaks. Now, to see a little bit, not unusual, all right? But if you can see actual fluid loss coming from that seal where the piston enters the chamber, then that's a sign that they need to be replaced. And you got a mouse, buddy. I knew I saw something moving. He just went underneath there.
No, that was from someone's car. Bill said,
There he goes.
There he goes.
All right.
No, that's not good.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
So we keep this around. You can see it's a cut tire. Why the mouse goes up Pierre's leg. No, I'm only kidding. We can see that this had flat spots on it and cord wear.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can see that. And we show people because when they come in, as you can see this tire, wear bars, totally shot, right? But when people come in with flat spots, we try to explain, rather than their tire being on the road with the bad shocks, you could ruin a good tire.
Yeah.
And it's doing this. Okay. It's going up and down, and that leads into a problem.
Yep. And once that wear pattern starts,
you ain't getting rid of it.
You're never going to get rid of it. You can't correct it. Once it's there, it's done.
We had this one customer, very good customer. It's one of our neighbors over here, commercial neighbors. The guy was putting his expensive Michelin tires on his car. We told him like 10 times, you need struts, you need struts. After the third set, he finally went for struts. But you're not getting that wear pattern now. And he goes, well, what can you do? Now, one guy told us they can do something called shaving a tire. Now, I don't know who does that. At least I don't know anyone. I've never shaved a tire. But they said they also shave tires for all-wheel drive. If you only want to buy one tire, you can get the brand new tire and shave it down to match your other tires.
Yeah, sure. Let me just throw
what a waste of money. You're just burning the rubber off. I'd rather take my car out and burn rubber.
Yeah, right. So how are you going to check the suspension system on your customer's vehicle? You know, we were all taught the old bounce test, right? Get up there on the hood and just really push down on it, see how much it bounces. I am not a big fan of that test. I don't think it really tells the whole story. And it also depends on the vehicle that you're doing. A high-end Cadillac is going to respond differently than my old Ford pickup truck is going to respond. I don't like that. I like to start with this visual inspection. Again, we've heard us stress that all evening. I'm going to keep on doing that. I'm going to make sure that you guys take that home. Abnormal tire wear, any physical damage, any leakage, any torn protectors, the boots around the shocks, the rubber that you were referring to in the springs.
The metal cover.
Yeah. And take a look at the bump stops.
Yes.
If they're damaged and broken, then that suspension went a little further than it's supposed to, right? So that's another good sign. If we got the bounce test on there so you know how to do it, should settle out on the first rebound. But again, depends on the vehicle that you're doing. Better yet, take it out for road test and take particular attention to any defects in cornering, stability. Do you feel it jackknifing when braking? Anything like that to indicate that it's not performing the way it should. And as we saw earlier, some aftermarket suspension manufacturers, shock absorber manufacturers, they recommend replacement every 50,000 miles. I'm not going to tell you that, okay? It depends on the vehicle.
Right. Some last longer and some go quicker.
Right. And especially with some of these newer high-end suspension systems. I have a comment.
Actually, it's my own comment again. When I had my shop, I had a road course, a specific set of roads that I would use for those road tests so that I could compare apples to apples on my road tests. And I recommend doing that.
Yeah, very good point. Let's share it again to make sure everybody heard that. Pierre had and recommend this for every shop, every tech. Have the same road test that you take every vehicle on, so that you have that element of the puzzle remains the same. So you find a place where you can perform these tests safely within the boundaries of the law and close to your shop, but have yourself.
We're not paying your ticket.
Right. Have yourself a road course near the shop where you can do these things, where you can make a few left-right sweeps, where
go
you
over
can
a little
put some
bump,
Harvey, hit the bumps, look where the speed bump is, go through the neighborhood Publix.
We have one little side road. Now we have a normal course, but only when we hear like bad squeaks or whatever. We have this one road. It's probably like a half mile down, and we go over it. And if someone has something, I mean, there's some good holes. You got to go real slow. And you find it.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So it's
absolutely.
important.
All right, on to the steering system. Right now, the next part of the puzzle. We've got the wheels under control. We're keeping the contact patch on the ground, but if I can't turn the wheels, and I can't really go much anywhere but straight line, right? So we got to be able to turn that wheel, take care of control of the direction we want to go in. So steering being defined as the collection of all the components, linkages, etc., which allows the vehicle to follow our desired course. And I just found this pretty interesting. This is the Ackerman geometry, I think they refer to it as, which shows us how we have to be able to turn the wheels on a vehicle in order to get it to track around that circle. They're not turning exactly the same.
Same.
Right. And then, go ahead.
Dog tracking. So a lot of times when the differential or something in the rear is off, you see a car going down, it looks so odd. That vehicle needs to be checked out. Sometimes it may be frame damage or structural damage, or sometimes there's loose components, or maybe the wheel alignment's way out of whack.
Yeah, that's your thrust line, guys.
That's your thrust line.
When you're looking at the
very
thrust line.
important.
And again, that goes back way up to what we were saying earlier about today's vehicles. Back in the old days, if you're doing a tow and go, you're not doing yourself or your customer any favors.
That's terrible.
You need to do a full four-wheel check. You need to know where that thrust line is. Again, why? Because it goes back to ADAS nowadays.
Yeah.
That vehicle has to be on the center line in order to work.
And
work properly.
when, a proper alignment is minimum, like let's say you're using a Hunter system, minimum, maximum, preferred. When I do, I want it preferred. I want it right in the middle. Now, sometimes there are kits that you got to put shim kits or whatever because things are a little out of whack. But why is it out of whack? What's bent? Right. Is there a subframe problem? Is there, a spindle issue? Weak springs.
Sure, absolutely.
Look at it.
Absolutely.
And by the way, whenever I do that, I put a scan tool on it and I put the steering angle sensor at 0.00 before I do that.
Very good point, Pierre. If you didn't hear that, scan tool and steering angles are super important.
Yeah.
Now, again, if you got a good alignment system like Hunter,
right?
Okay, they're going to have all that stuff in there and walk you right through it.
Right. Just putting this up for the sake of showing it to you. Of course, you're all familiar with this. The two types of parallelogram steering, and of course the rack and pinion, and now of course electric power steering. So it's very similar. All right. So one more thing onto the car, and just want to kind of let's show them that first too. Let me grab that strut.
You mean the one that dropped?
Yeah. Just a couple of notes here, guys. Now, I don't know how G feels about it. I know how I always felt about it. If I had to do strut work, I had that big old thing on the wall and you compress the spring and everything. But think about it. If I'm replacing it because the shock cartridge in here is shot, how long has it been on the vehicle? 50, 60, 100,000 miles? You think that spring is any good? Why would I put an old spring on a new shock cartridge? You think these bearings are any good?
Yeah,
they wear.
They wear. They're bad.
If you want to do the full value for your customer, consider offering them a loaded option so that everything is working as Pierre said earlier. It is a system, and you don't put in one good part in the mix of a bunch of bad parts.
Now, the only bad thing, in all honesty, we always try to sell a loaded strut, but some vehicles are not available.
That's true. That's true.
So that's when you got a cartridge on.
However, if you go to duralastparts.com,
They got a large
So you can
selection.
check it out. They do have a very large selection. And I want to say this too, and I'll share some more in a bit here. Again, not trying to put up promo for them. They are a sponsor. We do appreciate that very much. But I give them a lot of kudos because they've done a lot to re-engineer a lot of their product lines under the Duralast branding. It is a standalone brand now and very high quality. I've used some of their stuff in my own vehicles.
Yeah. It's eye-opening
Absolutely.
to me that, you know, I knew what they were selling before.
Yeah.
And now I see they've really done a nice job in using beefy stuff.
Yep. And just real quick, when we pan out, you can see they do have a couple of options that we'll highlight in a moment. But you either have the Duralast standard chassis line, or you have the Duralast Gold. And again, we're going to talk a little bit more, show that more in a moment. So
A nice ball joint right here with the nut and everything you need.
to do the job.
Not opened yet. There you go. And the boot, and no over, you know, sometimes people over grease it. Put the Zerk fitting in, grease it. The cap is already down on here. Don't pop the boots off. You just want to see a little come out. Make sure you put the cotta pin through.
Right.
Nice quality part that fits in, and they give you everything you need right here.
Yep.
All the bolts, and a lot of them don't. You get different parts that are out there. They don't give you the bolts. Okay, you got to use old ones if they're in there. If they have rivets, obviously, then it would come with bolts. So they do a nice setup.
They got some other nice stuff there I'm going to show you guys here in a little bit. I want to just go back to the car real quick before we start winding things down. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat window. Again, our whole focus this evening was to share with you some of the things that you can do on every vehicle that comes into your shop. Now, as Z already kind of hinted at, when you're doing the visual inspection underneath the vehicle, check the linkages, check the ball joints, check those boots for damage, splits, tears, dry rot, anything that's not going to keep the grease where it needs to be. If it is equipped with grease fittings, clean off those fittings and lubricate them when your vehicle's in for its routine maintenance. Whenever it comes in for an oil change, if you can lubricate those components, do so. It's just part of the job.
We'll get that mouse.
We're having
a
little fun with the mouse here in the shop. So make sure you do that. And when it comes in, take the time. Grab that wheel. See if you can see any noticeable play. Do the up and down and the side to side. See if you can find any play. But if you want to check like the ball joints, for example, did you know that the way we really need to do it is to get that 9 and 3 o'clock position and push in and out. In and out. In order to see if there's any lateral movement in the joints. In fact, there are specifications for that, and you can use a dial indicator to measure them if you suspect there's any problem. If you feel any give, that's too much.
Too much.
It's worn out. It needs to be addressed. So I want to make sure that you guys do that when you're doing these vehicle inspections.
And in the old days, Pete, there was always a bunch of different issues with people checking ball joints. Here in New York State, they took it off the inspection list for people checking them wrong. They would use these huge pry bars,
right,
and or the old Ford setup where the spring was up top of the control arm. Go, oh look, it's bad. You have to know how to check it correctly.
Yep. Actually, if you would like to see some of that in action, if you go to the Motor Age Magazine YouTube channel, I actually did a complete lower ball joint inspection and changeover on that big old dually of mine. Let me tell you what, pulling the front wheel on that son of a gun.
Well, hold on. How about doing kingpins?
Even for the entertainment value to watch me struggle pulling that big 100-pound rotor off the truck, and you'll enjoy it for that. But it does go through the whole process again of measuring of the dial indicator, proper installation, procedures, and sometimes you get a product that you don't quite know that of what needs to be done or what might be new about it. Again, just like we talk about all the time with electrical drivability, all the fancy stuff, you also want to check those technical service bulletins. Are there any releases or information about that vehicle? Maybe there's some new parts out. There's a caution statement, well, it wasn't related to suspension quite exactly, or steering quite exactly, but on your power steering line on your new coach.
My new coach, there was an issue where now I got it from Ford Motor Company and the DOT. There's a DOT on it where you can lose steering and brakes. And hands up, I lost it. And the thing didn't have 1,600 miles on it.
Yeah.
So always check stuff and realize if there's an issue or not. Same thing on this joint that I showed you before. If you look on Identifix, this thing actually moves. And of course, when it's in the unit, the joints kind of rust out inside. So the bearing counts, it's not greasable. Okay. And this thing actually, you can see the movement in it. Okay. And I could feel the movement, but there's the movement. It's moving right there. That joint is worn out. Now, if this breaks and you're going down the road, this was off a Ford Escort. Okay. And she felt something weird and sometimes would hear it. Well, you went like this with the wheel, just a little. Was this clicking?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so shaking, shake, feel, and adjust and check that all out. See what's wrong. Feel what's wrong.
Right.
And if you do enough vehicles, you know better than anyone because you're doing it all the time.
Exactly.
We do the wheel like this. And how about many inner tie rod ends that go bad? A lot of times when we go over the car and do this and you feel play and it's not the outer tie rod end, it's the inner tie rod end. And you need to take care of that because if something happens, you're in trouble. Now, if you see leaking coming out of a rack, that's all part of the steering.
Right.
We've been doing a lot of racks recently because people are holding on to their cars. We never had so many old vehicles in because you can't get new ones. I lucked out with this thing only because they couldn't sell until they got battery updates. And they finally got the battery update, and I just hit it the right day because they had nothing else left. I went in there to buy the vehicle, lucked out.
Which is actually, I mean, the fact that the vehicle, what they call the vehicle fleet, when you look at all the fancy research papers that come out on this industry topics, bottom line is that the average age of the vehicles in the United States now is getting close to 14 years. People are holding on to their vehicles longer than ever before, which is good for us because that gives us
we're busier than could be.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we have any questions, I want you to stick around a little bit. Of course, we want to again thank our partners at Duralast for providing tonight's sponsorship so we could bring this information to you.
Yes, thank you, Duralast.
And I'd like to ask you to give me a few minutes and let's just hear a little bit about what Duralast has to say.
That's why it's so important to select a quality replacement, a part that is made with resilient, stress-tested materials, like the Duralast line of chassis parts. With 98% vehicle coverage, these parts are forged from heavy gauge microalloy steel and are rigorously tested to make sure that they meet or exceed the OE specifications for form, fit, and function. For vehicles needing more durability and better than OE performance, like those used for towing, hauling, or off-roading, the choice is the Duralast Gold chassis line. If you'd like to find out more about the Duralast OE quality chassis line or the specialty enhanced gold line, visit duralastparts.com/chassis.
Yeah. All right. Again, that's just really quick kind of information on Duralast. I invite you to go to duralastparts.com to learn more about what the company has been doing lately. For their suspension and steering components, I got to tell you this, guys, they guarantee OE form, fit, and function on their standard line. The gold line is even stronger than OE fit. And a lot of times, G, there's certain little special steps you need to take in order to do the job right. Maybe it's clocking the ball joint a certain way or whatever it might be. And with the gold line, if that's the case, there's actually a tag in the box letting you know what that is. And some of them even have a video link that you can go back and watch the video installation steps. So you make sure you do the job right. So especially for your younger techs who are new in the shop, then that's something that's a very good resource for them and for us. It's kind of like looking for those TSPs.
Yeah. We just used 2 of their wheel bearings yesterday that no one else had, and they had.
Yeah.
For
and they stand behind
bearing
them.
assembly.
They stand behind them.
Yep.
So real quick, guys, if you're not already, make sure that you follow Motor Rage on your favorite social media. I do want to bring to your attention that in October 15th, myself, and our newest addition, Brandon Steckler, will be at Rosemont, Illinois for the Accelerate motor race training event. It's going to be in
Scott
October
Scott Brown
15th.
as well.
And Scott Brown as well. Yeah, I don't want to forget Scott. You can get more information at accelerate-conference.com. Early bird registration is now open. It's not a bad price to begin with, even if it wasn't for the discount. So check that out.
And you get to see us in person.
Yeah.
Get more than nauseated.
Come on. How long has it been since we've had a chance to hang out together in person, right?
Yeah.
We're starting to get back to normal here. It sounds good, right? So it feels good. And of course, can't forget my friends at TST. All yours, buddy.
So TST this coming Wednesday, April the 27th at 7 p.m. Eastern. We will do a lab scope setup, usage, and diagnosis. We'll use a whole bunch of different lab scopes. So clear the dust off your Snap-on, your Pico, your E-scope, your Fluke. Those are the 4 we will work on and show you some really neat stuff. It comes with a handout, $40 for non-members, members $20. You can go to tstseminars.org, and we hope to see you there this coming. And by the way, we record all of them, and you can view them for 1 month, and comes again with the handout.
All right, cool. So once again, we know that your time is valuable. We appreciate your choosing to spend your time with us. Before we go, I have one more favor to ask. If you thought that your time with us tonight was worth your time, type a Y into the chat, please. Let us know. And if you think that we kind of missed the mark, well, let us know that too, so that we can work on improving it the next time we see you, which will be in May 23rd, by the way. That's going to be a really good one. Diagnostic process, turning that check engine light off, sponsored by our friends at Snap-on.
Oh, yeah.
So that'll be really a cool one to do. So type an N. If you thought it was a waste of time, of course, if you thought it was a waste of time, you probably split already. But
Right.
even
Or
if
type
you
a little
stuck
Y.
around,
Give us a
so let
Y
us
if
know
it was
what you
good,
think.
and if it's not.
And of course, we'll give you a moment there to do that. And if you have any questions before we call it an evening, we'll give it just a couple of minutes.
All wise.
Well, we do thank you for that. We thank you for your time once again. And we will see you next month.
So if there's no questions or other thing, I think we're all said and done. Again, thank you so much for spending your time with us. Join us May 23rd. If you want to know more about it, like I said, follow us on social media, follow TST, follow Motor Rage. It'll be easy for you to know when we got the next one coming. All right. So until then, I'm Pete.
I'm Jay, and thank you again.
See you later.